Welcome to Season 7 of the Master Your Lens podcast. Yes, we are back. This is the first episode of August 2020, and it's special because, well, of course, it's the first episode of Season 7, but also, today we're going to announce something huge. But before that, let's go back to the root of photography, because today we are going to discuss the essence of photography. Now, I want you to think about that. What is the definition of a photograph? What's the definition of photography? Let's dive in. You're listening to the Master Your Lens podcast, episode 168.
Hey, John Lee Dumas here, the founder and host of EO Fire, and welcome to the Master Your Lens podcast, the photography podcast dedicated to sharing inspiring stories, technical tips, and powerful secrets to help you become a better photographer. And now, your host, Matthew Jordan Smith.
All right, Photography Nation, let's dive in. Today we're talking about the definition of photography. So when did this all begin? Back in 1826, a Frenchman by the name of Joseph Nicephore Niépce. I'm sure I slaughtered his name, but I'll have to ask my French friends on how to pronounce his name the correct way. Now, I'm sure he didn't know it back then, but that first photograph would change the world. Today, we take photography for granted because everyone has a device that can take a picture. And in 200 years, it has really come a long way. In the beginning of photography, it was difficult. That first photograph, there was no infrastructure around it. I mean, think about that. Nicephore takes this picture, but at the time, did they even call it a picture? Was that a word in the vocabulary? Now, yes, there were paintings and there's all of this vernacular around it, but not around photography. Think about it. It's brand new. There's nothing to support it. And everything we know at the time revolves around painting. So it only makes sense for photography to fall into that same mold, to be seen the same way we view a painting or the way we view art. Think about that. In a frame, on a wall, seen flat. It's been almost 200 years. And yes, photography has evolved quite a bit, but there are some things that are still the same. For the most part, how we view a picture is in a frame. Even if you're looking at your photographs on your phone or on a screen of any type, you are within that frame. Maybe it's a frame on your wall. Maybe it's your phone. Maybe it's your desktop or your laptop. But you're still viewing pictures in the same way we did from the very beginning. This year, it seems like everything has changed. It's 2020. In 2026, photography will be 200 years old. And even though that sounds like a long time ago, and it is 200 years old, that's nothing in the grand scheme of things. Since I last spoke to you, a lot has changed. In the month of July, a company that began as a photography company, Kodak, did a pivot, making an adjustment from photography, what they were known for once upon a time, to moving into the pharmaceutical realm. Actually, they weren't the first to do that. They're kind of late to the game. But their stock definitely soared when they did so. And if you have Kodak stock, or if you did on July 1st, 2020, you are a very happy camper today. Kodak is just one of the companies that exist because of what happened in 1826. If we stop and think about all the companies that have benefited from photography, we'd be here all day. I mean, just to name a few: Nikon, Canon, Sony, Olympus, Adobe, and yes, even Apple. Did they have any idea in 1826 how photography would change the world? Let me just give you a hint. 52 years later, after the first photograph, the photograph made a pivot to become the first motion picture ever. The first moving pictures. Now, the funny thing about that, it was all based off of a bet. If you are a photographer, I'm sure you know the story of Edward Muybridge, the man responsible for the first moving pictures. So 1826, the first photograph. 52 years later, the first moving pictures that become the gateway to what we now call cinema. What would our world look like without photography, without movies? Think about it. Right now, you have a device that may be in your pocket or maybe even in your hand right now that's capable of taking a picture and creating movies. This year alone, that device has changed the world we live in by being able to record at any time and then having the world be able to see those images or those movies instantaneously. Things that have happened for hundreds of years were not documented, but today they can be. And once the world sees it, you can't forget it. Think about all the things that have happened this year that had been recorded that changed the world. Things that we didn't see before. Photography has been used to record history and show it to the world. It's an amazing art form, along with cinema, another amazing art form. These two art forms are responsible for amazing careers. Think of all the great photographers. Think of all the great cinematographers, all the great directors, all the great actors, all the great movies you've ever seen, all the great companies that have built their wealth off of photography, all because of an event that took place back in 1826 with that first photograph. You can't define photography without knowing its history. Today, photography is easy, but in 1826, there was nothing around to support it. When there's nothing to support it, everything must be created. And the creation period can be scary. At the beginning of photography, the world was scared that photography would destroy art, destroy painting. But of course, it didn't. It's a totally different art form. And today we see them as being very different. But in the very beginning, they did not. If you think about moving pictures today and a still picture, you see them as being very different. But they're closely tied together. Let's go a step further. What would an iPhone be, or any type of smart device, if it didn't have the ability to take a picture or record video? When the iPhone first came out, it was all about being a phone. Today, the number one way to sell that phone is through photography. While the devices have changed over the years to capture photography, the image, for the most part, hasn't changed that much. I mean, it has gone from being shot on film to being shot on digital, but all of those images are shown in the same way. Almost 200 years later, we're still viewing photographs the same way we did in the 1800s. Yes, our devices have changed. There weren't computers before. There weren't smartphones or other devices like this. But we're still seeing things in a 2D manner because that's what photography is. An art form that's 2D. Even cinema, the cousin of photography, is also seen in 2D. So when it comes down to defining photography, it's flat, 2D, two-dimensional, and defined to fit within a frame. When it comes to taking a picture, that process also is kind of the same as it was back in the 1800s. And now remember, photography is only a little less than 200 years old. In the grand scheme of things, it's still a baby. Now I live in Japan, and when people say something is 200 years old, people here laugh, because 200 years is really nothing. For the last 35 years, I've made my living as a photographer, taking pictures and doing it on a professional level. For photographers, we know what it means to take a picture. We know the process. And if you are a professional photographer, you really know what it takes to make a picture. There's no question about it. You know the process. You know what it feels like, what it looks like. And today, there is no argument about that. I have enjoyed taking pictures since I was 12 years old. And in the beginning, for me, it was just a hobby. But for the last 35 years, it's been my career. But this career has given birth to something new. And today, I want to announce something brand new. And I'm sharing it here with you for the first time, here on the podcast. On September 1st, 2020, I will debut a brand new art form. That's right, not photography, not cinematography, but something different. Something derived from photography, like cinema, but not photography. And like the first days of photography or the first days of cinema, there is no infrastructure around it. And that's very exciting. On September 1st, 2020, I will debut this brand new art form at the prestigious Kyoto Museum of Photography. As I said, this is derived from photography, and this is the best place to debut the art form. At the prestigious Kyoto Museum of Photography. So here's the funny thing. This new art form, it does not translate on a flat device. You don't get it by seeing it on a phone or a computer. You have to experience it in person. Now, I'm sure that won't always be the case, but right now, it's brand new. If you are in Japan, I want to invite you to come and experience it for yourself. As the world changes and things open up, I'll take it to other parts of the world. Right now, it's only available here in Japan. But that will change. I have been quietly working on this project for a long time, but it didn't really come to life until I moved to Tokyo. I can't say more yet, but something amazing is coming, and I hope you get to experience it. All right, Photography Nation, that's going to do it for this session of the Master Your Lens podcast. Join me again next week as we continue our conversations into the world of the visual creative. I'm Matthew Jordan Smith. Enjoy your week. Stay safe. I always end this podcast by saying, always dream big. For me, it's not just a saying. It's something I live by. I've had a very big dream for a long time, and now I will debut a part of that dream on September 1st. I look forward to sharing much more with you in a future podcast. Until then, always dream big. Bye for now.